Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Politics Now. We're talking about modern politics and modern America. And today, we're going to be discussing why the DeSantis campaign not only has lost the nomination for the Republican Party, but is also continuing to implode. And we aren't even at the debates yet, and the debates are going to make things a lot worse. So, yeah, let's get into that. So, DeSantis, he is not doing good right now. He is stagnating and continues to go down. He's either flatlining at very low percentage points, or he just completely plummets in the polls. You can see this happen quite a bit, where when he was announcing, he was at around 30 points, and he was generally liked by a lot of people, even Trump voters, because a lot of Trump voters still like DeSantis, but they just like Trump more. And that was very true before he announced, because DeSantis hadn't ruined his credibility with supporting neocons and sort of being a rhino during the campaign. So he was still at 30 points, and then he went down again. He sort of stagnated around 20 points. Not an issue. He could probably recover, but it's still going to be a tough fight. And he sort of stagnated. He went down to lower 20s. He hit the teens. He went back up to 20. And in the recent weeks, he's just gone completely down. He went down to 18, stayed there for a little bit, and now he's at 14. And he's been there for a while. So DeSantis is clearly not doing that well, because you can't win a nomination when you are at 14 points. And I don't think you could even win a state that you are more favorable in if you have 14 points, because that's just going to make it a lot harder to win the states that you are favorable in. And for DeSantis, that's places like Utah, Florida, a lot of places like that where he has more favorability there than Trump. But considering how Trump has 55% and DeSantis only has 14, that's not good. It's not a good sign when third place, which should be around the area where all of the other people are, Ramaswamy has over half of DeSantis's percentage, and if you have that and you are that close to your competition, that's not good. Even when DeSantis, before he announced, the closest person was Mike Pence, and he was only at 6%, while while DeSantis was at around 30%. Now he's within 7 points, and that's not good for him. So he's going to have a very tough time getting this nomination, and especially winning Florida and Utah, because if he can't win those, then he's not going to win any other state. And having 14 points in a primary poll, especially if it's a poll that takes in more polls and multiple sort of graphs multiple polls into an average, if your average is 14%, you're not going to win the nomination. Hillary Clinton in 2008, she had 40% and she didn't win the nomination. And that was a year where a lot of people thought she was going to win. But imagine being at 14%. That's where RFK is polling. And I think RFK is now beating him. So he's clearly not going to win. So how could DeSantis win if he's polling worse than somebody in the Democrat primary who also is polling similar numbers and is likely to lose? And Trump is almost polling similar numbers to Biden in his own primary. And in the Democrat primary, there's like 3 people. And let's just say Biden is a incumbent president, and he's not really facing that much competition, because RFK isn't exactly very popular with Democrats, because he more so is different from the more so establishment liberal camp that Biden has a stranglehold over. And he doesn't really have the Sanders approach of being a grassroots candidate, so he doesn't really have that. He's more so the Trump for the Democrats, which doesn't really go over that well. But even then, even with all that stacked against him, he's still beating DeSantis in a primary poll. So that's not very good if you're losing to someone who is pretty much guaranteed to lose. That means that you're pretty much guaranteed to lose. And the only way that you can turn it around, which honestly, it's not really looking like you can ever turn it around, but the way that DeSantis is hoping to turn his campaign around is by winning Florida and Utah, which are the most DeSantis-friendly states. And in the case of Florida, if you win that, you get all of the primary votes. So that could be a pretty big boost to any candidate who wins that. So Florida is a very, very tough state to win. And if you win it, you get a big reward. So DeSantis being the popular governor there, he should even easily have this in the bag. He should definitely win Florida. But he's not. He's doing really bad in Florida. And in fact, if you account for the unsure voters and add them all to DeSantis, which honestly wouldn't happen at all. But even in that hypothetical scenario where every single unsure voter in this poll, they all go to DeSantis, DeSantis is still losing. And if you're losing in that state, it doesn't matter how much you get or how much you lose by, because if you lose, you don't get any votes. You get no votes. Pretty much all of the voters in Florida that voted for you, they basically mean nothing, because if you don't win the majority, you are getting nothing there. And I don't really think that the unsure voters are going to all go for DeSantis. And even if you split it 50-50, which probably will be how it goes, where you split it 50-50, DeSantis still loses. If you give it all to him, DeSantis still loses. If you vote within the margin of error and give all the unsure voters all to DeSantis, that's pretty much the only way that he can win. If everything goes perfect and completely defies any reason on how polls work, where the margin of error is completely wrong and every single unsure voter magically votes for DeSantis, that's the only way he can win. And that's not very likely, and it's pretty much impossible. So Florida right now is looking like Trump is going to win, and not even by less than a point. He's going to win it by a couple of points, and to certain polls, he's going to win it by 10 or more. That's not very good, because if you lose it by a couple of points, you're not going to win Utah at all. You're not going to win any other state, because if you can't even win your home state, where you are the governor of that state, and you have won re-election on a very wide majority, that's not good. And Trump really has a fairly decent strategy in order to win Florida and win the primary, while DeSantis, he needs to risk all of it to win the primary, but right now he isn't doing that. He's more so playing either a safe strategy or he's completely focusing his campaign in the wrong ways, where he's trying to appeal to young voters, but it's not really going that well. He's trying to be relatable. That also isn't going that well, because most people can see right through it and see that no one acts like how he thinks that people act, where he's trying to be relatable, but it comes off more as alien that just landed on Earth, trying to imitate what humans do. So that really isn't going to work out. And DeSantis, that's his whole strategy. If that doesn't work out, he has no strategy. He has no clear path to victory. All of his supposed paths that he's wanting to take to achieve that primary nomination, they aren't working out. And he's desperately trying to pick a new path that will bump him up in the polls, but currently he hasn't found that, and it's likely that even if he does find the perfect path and he starts gaining in the polls again, well, you don't have the time to gain in the polls unless you pull off some miracle where you somehow gain 40 points and steal half of Trump voters to your cause and to your campaign. That's not going to work out, because a lot of these people who are voting for Trump, yeah, they like you, but they like Trump way more. And considering all the damage you've done to your own reputation and campaign over the 3 months that you've been in the race, it's clear that there's a reason why you're at 14 points. It's because you've completely destroyed your reputation and you've completely destroyed your campaign. You can't turn that around, because any improvements that you make are going to be hampered down by the mistakes that you made within 3 months. It's honestly pretty impressive. How do you go from being a front runner in a lot of these states and being at 30 points on average, while your opponent is at in the low 40s, where your opponent is a former president, so he should have a much bigger advantage in these polls, but he was still polling at the low 40s. You were polling at the 30s. It's within a decent percentage that you could win the nomination. And now, over 3 months, somehow you've lost over half of your base to Trump. And you're not going to win the nomination now if you can't even hold on to half of your base and just give it all to your main opponent. So Trump basically has it in the bag. DeSantis, just drop out. You're not going to win. It's not worth it anymore. Once the primary votes go out and the primary runs its course, it's going to be even more embarrassing for Ron DeSantis, and it's going to destroy his credibility fully. And given the fact that he's already destroyed a lot of his credibility, and the primary will likely destroy all of it, he basically has no future in politics, and I would be shocked if he had any future in any public office whatsoever. So, if you think DeSantis could somehow turn it around, leave that in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.